86% of millennials who are selling their homes that bought their homes in the pandemic regret ever purchasing that home in the first place.
If I had my time back, I would never in a million years have bought a condo. I regret it so much. It's one of the biggest regrets of my life.
The pipes in my 80-year-old home broke immediately as soon as I bought the house. All of that water that was coming down was spraying into my home.
From hidden costs to crushing debt, buyer's remorse just seems to be everywhere right now. And look, I get it. We bought our current home in spring of 2022 when prices were peaking. But we're okay because I've owned for about 20 years and had a good amount of equity. I've also had a lot of experiences, including rats, bats, mice, cockroaches, and worst of all, tenants. So today we'll see clips of some brutal home buyer's remorse, along with some learnings from myself and industry professionals. So let's dive into the first video.
86% of millennials who are selling their homes that bought their homes in the pandemic regret ever purchasing that home in the first place. That time period is going to be a case study for decades. Rates were at the lowest that they've ever been, with 2.5% to 3% interest rate. And everyone was moving to the countryside because they could finally work remote. And now the landscape of real estate has completely shifted, with interest rates hovering around 7%, and employers are rolling back their remote work policy. As a mortgage lender during that time, I can tell you this: it was not healthy, the amount of home buyers that felt so much pressure to put in an offer on a home that they never got to see the inside of. None of this comes as a shock to me whatsoever. As frustrating as it's been with these higher interest rates around 6 to 7%, it's honestly been a healthy dose of a good market, because a lot of home buyers and sellers are giving themselves times to figure out their next move.
Yeah, look, that was a big reason why the housing market was so crazy for a while there: the low interest rates. And payments change enormously when you go from 3% or less to something around 7%. And take it from me, I know my payment used to be prime -1, and so it was well below 3%. It was below 2% at one point, and in our current home, it got around 7%. So that is a huge swing. We're talking thousands of dollars potentially per month difference when the interest rates changed that much. And as he mentioned, the 80-something% of millennials selling their home recently regretted buying in the first place. If they bought around COVID, then they were buying high and they are selling low. So yeah, that hurts. And the whole buying without even seeing thing is just nuts. I mean, I have never done that, and I can't imagine just seeing pictures of a house, buying it, and then walking into it for the first time. The amount of regrets. And most of those people, I think, were buying without inspection. So yeah, crazy. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of regrets. The remote work thing too just compounds it. Like he said, a lot of people moving out to the countryside, and then their employers telling them they have to go back to work. So they go from having no commute to maybe a commute of hours. And so when we bought, it was like that crazy time period in the spring of 2022 when there were bidding wars and people were waiving contingencies like inspections, which we did as well. But I have a friend who's a home inspector, so he came with us in one of the viewings, and we told him ahead of time that he was going to come and just check out the most important parts of a home inspection, which he did, so we were pretty comfortable in buying the house. I would not want to buy one without an inspection. Another one of the contingencies is the contingency period, it's called, between when they accept the offer and when it actually closes. And we had a really short window, and a lot of sellers want that. They want that money as soon as possible, right? So we knew that was an advantage. We could bid a little bit less, and with that short period, we had a higher chance of getting the house that we wanted. Well, we had to sell our place, of course, and that became really stressful because we bought right around the peak, and then prices started coming down, and people started freaking out because interest rates were rising. Less people were buying. We weren't getting bids on our place, and we were freaking out because we needed that money for this place. So yeah, another contingency you wouldn't want to waive, or at least you don't want to give a really short contingency period. Once you buy a house, you want to make sure that you sell yours.
I officially have $0 to my name because I just took out every penny that I've ever saved. And this is on top of the deposit I've already made to buy a house. And wow, down payments are really large, and I'm broke now.
Right, yeah, she's not alone. A lot of people have felt that way, especially if they bought in the last 5 years or so, and especially if they bought during some of those sellers markets we saw around COVID or shortly thereafter. And yeah, look, it's impossible to know how you're going to feel after you buy because it's the most amount of money by far that you're ever going to spend if it's your first home. So there's going to be definitely some feelings of regret, some fear. So that's why you just have to spend the most possible time that you can and put the most effort into learning and thinking about whether the home you are looking at is right for you, and especially if you can afford it.
66% of millennials who bought a home during the pandemic have buyer's remorse. Why, you might ask? Well, some people found themselves trapped in a competitive market, settling for homes they weren't in love with, or waiving inspections just to guarantee they get the house in the first place. Check this out.
We made the decision to waive an inspection. We have since had plumbing issues. We currently have a hole in our dining room ceiling because we just had a leak in our plumbing.
My wife and I actually bought a house around that time. I wouldn't say we have buyer's remorse, but replacing an HVAC system and water heater definitely humbled us both.
Yeah, so I have some stories for you. The plumbing thing, I'm not sure if they would have been able to find, like an inspector would have been able to find the pipe if it was like between the floor and the ceiling below, if it was hidden. But maybe they could have identified some faulty plumbing elsewhere and at least given them the heads up. I bought a house that was a flip about 10 years ago and was in the basement watching TV when water started pouring down right in front of my new big screen TV. So of course I was freaking out, and it just turned out to be a fitting under the kitchen sink. And again, something like we had a home inspection, but he didn't find that. So inspectors aren't going to find everything. Even if you get an inspection, there are going to be some findings that will surprise you. So you got to have that emergency fund. You have to be ready for some unexpected repairs. And look, I've got HVAC stories too. We live in Canada, so we need air conditioning in the summer and a furnace in the winter, a really good furnace because it gets cold here. I put out a video on that last winter, so I'll leave a link below to that, our experience with buying a new furnace, because it died in the middle of February, the coldest time of the year, so we had to get on it quick. But of course, when you're desperate, you can easily get ripped off. So yeah, it was a good story there, but yeah, it's an expensive thing. I think did he say 10 grand? I don't know. That's about what it cost us to replace our whole HVAC, so that's furnace and AC. So yeah, you need that emergency fund. You have to be prepared for some expenses. What are some stories you have or you've heard of related to buyer's remorse? Let me know down in the comments. And while you're at it, you might as well hit subscribe. I put out videos regularly to help people make smarter money decisions.
Home ownership is not what I expected it to be. Honestly, if I had my time back, I would never in a million years have bought a condo. I regret it so much. It's one of the biggest regrets of my life. Renting, you have that like stress-free, no worry in the world. If something in my condo breaks, it's my responsibility to fix that issue. If I'm renting, I just call up my property manager, a landlord. It's their responsibility to send somebody in and fix that ASAP. When you're a homeowner, you're the one that has to do the research on finding someone to come in. You're the one that has to take the time and make sure everything's working smoothly. It's such a headache. I'll give you an example. Today, I had the unit below my condo say that they have a leak in their washroom. It's my responsibility to call a plumber, contact the property manager, and make sure it's fixed. And when you're a renter, that's not my problem. Like, my landlord will fix that problem. I'm paying rent, and that's a wrap. That's where my responsibility finishes. If I could turn back time, I would never have bought. I would have just stayed a renter. And honestly, the extra money that I would have had, I don't have to pay property taxes, I don't have to pay for repairs. Extra money, I would have poured it into investments. And future me would have been a lot better off. Just something to keep in mind, home ownership the grass isn't always greener on the other side.
Yeah, so sometimes renting can be a better decision depending on the market and depending on your personal situation. If it's a real stretch to buy a home, then renting can make a lot of sense. We're going to see a video a little bit later that speaks to that. If you can save the difference between what the rent is and what the mortgage payment and property tax and all the other potential expenses, you need to have that emergency fund for unexpected repairs. If you can save the difference and make sure to save that difference, then renting can make a lot of sense, especially when houses are overpriced. And look, I rented for a very short period of time before buying, so I don't know the luxury it is to be a renter, but obviously much easier than being an owner, especially if you have a rental property like I did for years and years. A lot of people got into duplexes thinking it was a great investment, have your renter pay off your mortgage, and hey, it worked out great for me for a long time. I made sure to have really good renters. I was super careful and diligent about my application process with the renters. I would do police checks, background checks, references, everything I possibly could to make sure they were good renters. So I always had pretty good renters. I said at the beginning that tenants were the worst. So I had a new family moving in, lovely new family. They were awesome tenants. They had 2 little kids and another one on the way, and they come in and there were cockroaches everywhere. The previous owners didn't tell me they had them, so they just had this infestation. If they told me earlier, I could have done something about it, but they just... when things would go wrong, they wouldn't tell me. And I had another problem where a tenant had a leaky toilet and never told me. And so the water was just kind of dripping and he was dealing with it with a towel, but there was water pooling on the floor, getting through the floor into the ceiling below. Thankfully, there was an unfinished basement, but I mean, that could have just been a disaster. So these are some of the problems you can see when you have tenants. So buyer beware if you're looking for a duplex or rental property.
Why does it feel like both buying a home and renting are terrible options right now? Well, because the idea of a starter house isn't a thing anymore. What do you mean? Well, it used to be that you could buy a house for a basket of raspberries and live in it and build up enough equity that you could roll it into a house that you actually wanted to live in. That just doesn't work anymore. So essentially people can't use their houses to build wealth anymore? I think they still can when they use it as a forced savings tool, and a primary residence is a really bad investment. You're hoping to get as much out of it as you put in. So what do we do instead? If we assume you can't get a starter house, it would make the most sense financially to rent and save the difference between current mortgages and rent rates until you have enough money to make a down payment on a house that you could see yourself living in for decades and decades.
I think that's generally good advice. However, I would like to modify what he said. So saving the amount between the renting and the mortgage, it's not just that. I would look at how much it would cost for the mortgage plus property tax plus emergency fund for unexpected repairs, bundle all that up and figure out what that would be in terms of a monthly payment, and then compare that to the rent and then save that difference. A mortgage is forced savings. Yeah, you're forced to save, but when you're a renter, of course, you can spend that money. So if you are renting and saving for a house, you have to be super diligent and make sure that you are saving that money, because when you have the option of spending it, obviously it's a lot easier to not save it.
As soon as you get the keys to the house, you're going to be thinking in your head, what the hell have I done? I've spent part of my life savings on junk. Like, take it back. Come and collect the house back. This is rubbish. You're literally going to feel like in the bottom of your stomach, like it's going to drop out from you like, what have I done? This is a mistake. And that's called buyer's regret. Everyone gets it. Because I know as soon as I opened the house, like I was elated. But once I started thinking about the work that needed to be done, or I started calling up my builder, I just had this sinking feeling in my heart like, oh my God, what have I done?
Yeah, so the house we bought is in Hamilton, which is near the Toronto area. So if you've heard anything about that, prices were insane. So we have a very serious mortgage. And yeah, it hurts thinking about what I could do with those thousands of dollars that I'm paying every month. What we could have done if we just rented, what we could have done with that money, the lifestyle that we could have had. And yeah, there are other regrets. You look around the place and there are things that you just don't love after you buy it. Of course, you're going to find a lot of stuff. And I don't know if everybody gets the kind of regret that she's talking about. Certainly millennials or anyone who bought a house around the crazy COVID time. And of course, especially when you overpay. But look, I mean, you have to think about over the long term. Yes, you've just spent a lot of money. There are going to be some things you don't like, but you can fix those things. You can learn to fix them. You can save up money and have a contractor fix them. There are lots of things that you can do to enjoy your house a lot more. And you just have to think about the fact that you are constantly saving. It's forced savings. So the vast majority of people will do better if they purchase a house and stay in it for the long term, because they are forced to save that money, whereas renters just generally have more spending money. A lot of people spend that rather than save it. So when you have a mortgage, it's forced savings. So in the long run, I think most people are better off.
If you don't want to have home buyer's remorse whenever you're purchasing a house, here are the most important things that you need to do. So please make sure you do not skip on this. Number one, check the zoning, because you might love your property right now, but if a gas station is being built next door and if they're putting low income density housing across the street, you might not feel the same way about that property. Do not forget to check the crime map, because trust me, quiet doesn't always mean safe. Do not forget to check that school that's attached to that particular property, even if you do not have kids, because this is very important for resale value. Drive that commute at least 3 times a day, especially during rush hour traffic, because trust me, in the morning might take you 20 minutes to get to work, but it will take you an hour and a half during rush hour traffic. And the last one, and the most important one in my opinion, is talk to the neighbors. The neighbors will tell you everything that Google doesn't. Most of the times they have information regarding everything that's happening in the neighborhood, especially something that has to do with that particular house.
Yeah, look, so before I bought my first house, I talked to the neighbors because it was fairly cheap. I was young, I was 26, and it was in downtown Hamilton, which at the time was not a great area, not a sought after area. So I talked to some of the neighbors and learned what I could. There was a park right next to the house, so I wanted to know if there was any people, unsavory types hanging out in that park. So I learned some valuable information about that, and I like her point about driving the commute. I mean, maybe easier said than done, but just look at the times where you drive to and from work. Just check it out on Google Maps and see what it's saying in terms of drive time. And then the crime map thing too, yep, super important as well. One fun story: after buying my first house in downtown Hamilton, which wasn't in the greatest area, I went to a Tim Hortons, which for my friends outside of Canada and the northern US is a donut shop, a very popular one. However, there was a homeless man picking up cigarette butts and smoking them, and for a country boy like myself, that was quite the shock. And that's what I saw when I was going to pick up or meet the real estate agent about some stuff, but I had already signed the house. It was already a done deal, and then I saw that. So yeah, important to check out the neighborhood and do everything that you can to make sure you are going to enjoy your home and the area around it.
So let me show y'all something. This is literally where they're building a house at, right next to me. Like literally, I could just make one leap and I'm over there on that side. That's how close they're building this house. Now, I bought my house back in December. I thought that portion where they're building this house at right here, I thought that was still a part of my yard. I was not informed prior to me buying my house that they were going to build a house here.
Well, that sucks, but look, I mean, when you buy a house, you're given the dimensions of the property, so you have to know where it begins and ends. So she really should have known that there was the potential that a house would have been built right next door to her. Yeah, that's super close. But like we saw from that industry professional earlier, look at the zoning around your area, because you don't want any surprises like a house in your backyard.
I bought my first house, and it's a very proud moment, but let me tell you, I have 300 new gray hairs from it. The economy in the last 3 years has gone to complete. The appraisal came back low. What that means is you have to come up with that difference, okay? So let's just say, I'm gonna use easy numbers here. Let's say I bought a property for $100,000 and I need to get a $100,000 mortgage, let's say. But the appraisal came back and valued the property at $50,000. The bank is only going to give me a mortgage of $50,000 because that's what the appraisal came back at. So that extra $50K of what the purchase price is, you have to come up with it on top of the 20% down payment. So it was a freaking thing.
Yeah, look, that's another issue that we haven't even really seen yet is people purchasing property. She said 100,000. It's more like $1 million or more in the Toronto area. So prices just skyrocketed. Like they were going up 30% year over year in that area for quite a while through COVID, and then prices just dropped. So when the price drops, like she said, when you have to re-up your mortgage, they're not going to give you more money than what the house is worth, but your mortgage could be well more than what the house is worth, depending on if it goes from like $1 million to 500,000, which is probably unlikely, but it's conceivably possible. So something to really look out for if someone put down less than 20%, or still they might not have that much equity in the house, so they're going to have to come up with, she's talking about 50,000. I mean, you could have to come up with a lot more. So that is another potential problem if you are stretching to purchase your first home that you should think about.
I bought a house when I was 26 and fell immediately into poverty. Okay, when I lived with my parents, I was living my best luxury lifestyle. I went to South Korea, bought a 2,000 plane ticket, didn't even blink twice. I went shopping, luxury goods, all that. Was traveling, was just, I was living it up. I felt rich. I had no bills. And I had a full-time 9-to-5 job. I was working as a nurse, okay? I was killing it. I bought my own house. That first mortgage payment came in and I was like, oh, this is a situation. But at first you think you can handle it, right? Like, what's a couple thou? What's a couple thou? I got it. But then the pipes in my 80-year-old home broke immediately as soon as I bought the house. Wiped out my savings. Then another pipe in a different area of the house broke. Okay, I'm struggling. Okay, I need help. Then my neighbor's pipe, it was a twin house, her pipe broke. And she didn't believe that her pipe broke, but her pipe broke on my side of the house. So all of that water that was coming down was spraying into my home. And then my water heater broke. When I tell y'all, I went from living in the lap of luxury to destitute immediately. Now, don't get me to fooling y'all, because it was worth it in the long run, because that house is now worth like 2 times what it was worth then. So I'm actually doing pretty good. But at the time, when I tell you I was struggling, I had to go to my parents every other day for dinner because your girl could not feed herself.
Yeah, that just reminded me of some other stories. The main pipe from the second floor toilet that came down. I had a house that was older than 80 years old, and this pipe was made of cast iron. Well, over time, cast iron can easily crack, which this one did. So water was pouring down all the way, thankfully, into the basement, which at the time was unfinished. But I mean, imagine how much worse that could have been, right? I guess as bad as some of the stories she said. And the water heater could be pretty expensive too. But yeah, after you buy a home, many things can happen, unexpected things, and they always seem to happen at the worst time. But she was lucky, as she said, her home price doubled. So in the end, she was just fine. But that's not always the case, especially for millennials who bought with no inspection at around the time of COVID. Can you imagine then if they were really stretched to make that mortgage payment and then had to spend thousands or tens of thousands on unexpected repairs? What are some experiences you've had or things that you've heard of related to buyer's remorse or owning a home? Let me know down below. And while you're at it, you might as well hit subscribe. I put out videos regularly to help people make smarter money decisions. And hey, if you know of anyone who could benefit from this video or who would enjoy watching it, then please share. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.